But I think a story like that could be made even better and more engaging if it went into a little bit more of the Catholic lore. Catholic horror. What is it? And why do we, as storytellers, need to understand it? In so much horror, there are no rules. Someone moves into a haunted house, some tropes occur, creepy things that we expect in a haunted house movie. And at some point, our protagonists, whether they are believers or not, will reach out to a priest. In other films, it may be a shaman, it may be a new agey housewife stock character. But this trope that we see in postmodern movies starts with The Exorcist, imitated in Amityville Horror, beautifully referenced in 1995's Casper. Catholic horror, essentially in its philosophy, is saying, I can prove to you that evil exists. By making you believe in evil, I can make you a believer in God. It starts out purely as this Roman Catholic vehicle that starts with the author William Peter Blatty. William Peter Blatty was a screenwriter and novelist. He won a large sum of money on Groucho Marx's talk show. He used that money to quit his 9-to-5 and focus on writing. So he did the work. He sat down and fought through the resistance and made it happen. Big breaks, writing screenplays for Blake Edwards flicks like A Shot in the Dark, which is where the Pink Panther comes from, these Peter Sellers comedies. So this man who's making a living writing comedies remembers that when he was going to university at a Catholic college, this story about a real-life exorcism. And it touched him. It gave him meaning. He's there, a Roman Catholic in a Catholic liberal arts environment, and he's saying to himself, this gives me this gives me some igniting in my soul. He was turned on. He was alive. So a couple decades later, he returns to this idea, and part of the reason The Exorcist is so impactful and touches audiences, in my opinion, is because Blatty wrote it from a place of passion. He saw this creation as something that would be what he calls an apostolic work. He really linked it to Christ, and that it was going to be a witness to the world. I will prove to people that demonic possession is possible by scaring them, and that will convert them. But he was also writing it as a way to heal himself. And I don't know if he did that consciously, but he had left his wife. He was dealing with the pain of that, worried about his children and his relationships with them. His mother was dying and eventually does die. And if you've read The Exorcist, the death of a mother is absolutely essential to the themes and the arc of the story. So I believe that the book itself has resonance. Before you even read the book, it has resonance. Maybe even in a way that the movie doesn't, because with books, the images are in our minds, so a lot scarier. So this book, as you can see, just heavy, heavy vibes. So Catholic horror establishes itself as an authority, and unlike pretty much any other work of fiction, unless it's something like Tolkien where there's all this world building and all the, the writer is really specifically creating a world and a lore. Usually, otherwise it's usually pretty vague, and it's just kind of saying, well, we live in a world of atheists and Protestants where nobody really believes anything or knows what they believe. So we can keep it vague. And that can be really interesting. But I'm here to teach you how to put that esoterica in the background of your stories, not only to give a sense of a real world, but also because it's aesthetic and people really like it. So moving on to a different aspect of writing Catholic horror. Have you ever noticed in anime if there's any kind of priest, Christian presence, any kind of like pastor or just Christian authority, they always look like Catholic priests? And I've gone out of my way to look into this, and you'll see it pop up on message boards, and other people have pointed this out. And the consensus online is it's an aesthetic choice. It looks good. And think about it. Priests, whether they're wearing their flowing cassocks or if they're, in a posh but simple black suit with the Roman collar, it looks really good. It looks great in black and white. And in fact, it looks good in space, because if you've seen Empire Strikes Back, that opening sequence where Vader's starship lands in the docking bay and you've got black and white and red, it looks like cardinals and bishops and priests. So very dramatic, very cinematic look. And it's also familiar. So all we've got to see is a priest coming to the front door and dun 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 dun. We know what we're in for, and when you're a storyteller, you need to know when to communicate quickly with imagery, and how to use cliches as something that can serve you. And again, to go back to comedy, it's used a lot quickly in comedy. Casper 1995 does it, where they're actually referencing an SNL sketch of The Exorcist. Earlier this summer, we had Jennifer Ortega on SNL, and she did an Exorcist thing. And just now when I was talking, I was saying, ding, ding, someone coming to the door like it's going to be the pizza guy, but instead it's a priest, and you're going to be thinking like, you could just write a whole sketch. It could be like the priest is at the wrong house. But the audience automatically knows what's going on. He's not a Jehovah's Witness. He's not a Mormon. He's not there to convert you. He's there to battle the forces of darkness. So what started as Roman Catholic propaganda becomes a cliche. And if I was going to write Catholic horror, this is where I would start. First of all, recognize yourself with what's coming out now. So immediately think of Grady Hendrix's My Best Friend's Exorcism, which again is coming from that more vague Protestant kind of world. But I think a story like that could be made even better and more engaging if it went into a little bit more of the Catholic lore. And again, it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be a part of the story itself. It's just there to create a sense of a larger world and to create a coziness and a place to live in. And I say coziness like Dracula's Castle cozy, just like fiction and media lets us hang out in these worlds that would otherwise be really uncomfortable and not fun to be in. I would definitely watch the film The Exorcist and The Exorcist 3, specifically for the Roman Catholic aspects. Exorcist 3 will show you that there's actually a book, a rite of exorcism, and watching the film, or reading this book, you would assume like, oh, that's a real thing that they use. It's tangible. I can hold it, and it's just like how people really like movies and novels and short stories that take place at a person's job. career and what a character does day by day and how they make a living, how they survive. All that's really interesting. So part of why I love The Exorcist and those kind of stories is I love to see, how does the shaman live? What is the life of the exorcist who, he's living in a dorm, like he has to live in a hall with seminary students, and he gets up and does the mass in the morning, runs track and goes boxing, gets too much drunk, gets drunk when he drinks too much Chivas Regal. So I would definitely immerse myself in that media to get an idea of how it feels and what it looks like, but also just get inspired and motivated. You could also watch Exorcist II, The Heretic, but that gives you a glimpse into more of the Ethiopian Orthodox world, which in itself is cool. And that film does what I'm talking about there as well, where you're seeing an exorcism on top of a mountain, and there's icons and all this stuff that you're not going to see in a Roman Catholic situation. So you're thinking, what is this? What am I looking at? And since it's so unique and so bizarre, I believe as an audience member, your first thought isn't, oh, this guy's like a George Lucas and he's creating lore. You're thinking, no, this is grounded in some kind of historical reality. Either that or it's a David Lynch thing and this person's just pulling this imagery from their subconscious. So either one is cool. And the point of a video like this is to teach you how to put your research and your understanding of the occult into your stories.